Thank you, everybody, for making some time today to come to our iSELECT training. For those that you haven't met me personally, my name is Chuck Eno. I'm the Executive Vice President of iAir, one of the owners of the company, and wanted to talk to you about iSELECT. If you're not already set up as a user, how you can do that, and some of the nuances and even some of the quirks of iSELECT to help you have a very smooth operating time with iSELECT to be able to get units selected quickly and efficiently and help you increase your sales, hopefully. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll just start right into the presentation. So the first thing I'd like to mention is that iAir has moved. What you're looking at here is one of our solar HVAC units sitting outside of our original plant, which is located in Orlando. We have moved to a new facility that is 3 times the size of our previous facility. And if you look in the upper left-hand corner, here is the new address. It's 1240 South Hoagland Boulevard, Kissimmee, Florida. So for those of you who know the Kissimmee area, it's just south on Hoagland Boulevard, just south of Route 192, which is, of course, the main drag east-west that rolls through Kissimmee. So our training today is on iSELECT. iSELECT is our selections, quote, and submittal software that allows you to be able to select iAir's equipment or modifications in a quick amount of time to make it more efficient and more productive for you. So if you would like to use iSELECT, if you look right here on our website, right on the front page, there's this green block. It says Get iSELECT Quote. And if you click on that, it will take you right into iSELECT. Now, I'm going to log myself out for just a moment in the upper right-hand corner, log out, because if you do not have an iSELECT account currently, you can get one very simply. If you press that green button, this is what you will see. It'll say iAir, log in, and down at the bottom, it says either forgot password or sign up. So if you don't have an account, you can quickly hit sign up, and this screen will come up. And so you just fill out all of the appropriate information into each one of those fields, click create an account, and either myself, Erica, Johan, or Robert, or Lito, Robert and Lito are our regional sales managers. Robert handles the Eastern United States, Lito handles the Western United States, and they can approve you. Any one of us can approve you so you can start using iSELECT right away. So I'm going to go back and sign myself back in very quickly. So when you sign in, what you will see is this screen. It's called the project list. Now, the way iSELECT is designed is what we call a forward and downward looking software program. So every single job across every single distributor that we have, across every different brand that we're associated with, okay, we can see that at iAir. We can see everything. You, as a distributor of ours, can see anything that your distributor does. You can see what your fellow sales engineers or territory managers are building in iSELECT. You can see what you yourself have built in iSELECT. And if you set any customers up, such as consulting engineers, so that they can use iSELECT, they would now be beneath you as a company, and you can see everything they can do. So when you open this and you see the project list, you're not going to see all these different choices across the top. You're going to see projects and you're going to see metric, okay? Users, companies, import data, units. Those are all things that we at iAir use internally. Since I'm an administrator, I have access to every single thing that iSELECT can do. So you won't see all of these. The two most important ones, of course, are projects, whatever projects that you're going to build in iSELECT, and then metrics. Now, what are metrics? Let's click on that for just a moment. Sales metrics are a tool built into iSELECT so that you can see of all the jobs you've quoted, which jobs are remaining open, which jobs you have won if you mark that project as closed won, which you can do back from the project itself. We'll show you how. And if you lose a job, it's good to mark that in there too. So now you all can start to get a good look at, hey, what's my own closure rate on iAir projects as a sales engineer? What's our closure rate as a company? How can we use iAir to help us move more of our products through the system? In fact, some of our distribution partners have told us that for every dollar of iAir product that they move, they're pulling through another $3 to $5 of their associated brand. That's important. This can help you to understand that. So it's a feature, it's a tool that we put in there for your benefit. Now, what we do, what iAir uses metrics for, is to assist you or to remind you, hey, you've got all these open quotes out there. You're showing that so many of those have been closed won and so many have been closed lost. So what we do is once a month, Erica puts together a metrics report and sends it to you. We call that the mail merge, when we take and merge all those metrics together and divide them up by individual company and by individual sales engineer. We send them to the appropriate people so you guys don't have to go chasing after this. Once a month, she sends it to you, and you can say, oh, yeah, look at this. I forgot all these 3 jobs. I won this job. I won that job. You can take that information, go right back into iSELECT and say, hey, this one was marked closed won. This one was marked closed lost. The rest of these are open, and you can build this report for yourselves right in iSELECT. So at any moment, if your sales manager comes to you and says, hey, how many iAir jobs are you selling? Metrics will tell you that. If he says, hey, what's your closure rate on iAir jobs? Metrics will tell you that. So that's what metrics is good for. Now, going back to projects, and this is the real meat and potatoes, if you will, of what we're going to talk about today, how to put a project into iSELECT, how to select a unit in iSELECT, what are some of the features of iSELECT, and what are some of the nuances or even some of the quirks, if you don't mind, of iSELECT. So to get started, what we'll do is we'll start by adding a new project, and that's very simple. Right up here on the right-hand side, add a new project. So I click that, and this add project screen comes up. Now this takes only a few minutes to fill out, but we encourage you to please fill out everything. For example, we have a couple things that are asterisked, but the reality is we'd like everything filled out because let's take, for example, the country. There's no asterisk. We all know we live in the United States. Okay, but we should select that, and we should select the state and even the location. And we'll do that in just a moment in an example. But the reason why is because this software actually uses ASHRAE data to help it select. So if you don't put the country, the state, or the location in, you may not be able to get any selection at all. In fact, I've had people call me saying, hey, man, I'm using your iSELECT and I can't get a selection to save my life. Can you look at it? So I go in and find the job name, I pull it up, and I realize they didn't put this information in. The instant I put it in, suddenly they can get a selection. So this is important. So let's just do a quick selection here. Let's call it test for training. And today is 5/13/25. There. Then I'm going to move over and hit my basis of design. We'll just call it an iAir basis of design because that's what we'd like to see as much as we possibly can, iAir basis of design. Country is the United States. Customer company, okay? That's you guys. Who's my customer? So since I'm an iAir employee, I'll just use myself, iAir. And since I live in Florida, we'll just use Florida as the state. And me, I'm the customer. So since I'm the person doing all of this, I'm just naming myself in all of this. And location is, I'll just say West Palm Beach, Florida, since that's the closest large city to where I live, which is Jupiter, West Palm Beach. Okay, and let's name an engineer. I'm good friends with the folks at CAM Consulting in Florida, so we'll just put them in. Now we know who, if we're basis of design, gave us this wonderful selection. Once that's put in, all I have to do is hit add, and now it gives me a project, which up at the top you can see right here This is our test project for training on 5/13/25. Who created it? I did, Chuck. I'm with iAir. It was most last modified by me because this is the first iteration of it even being used. I named myself as the customer and the company, putting CAM Consulting as the engineer. It assigns me a project number. Whereas if you ever want to track a job, if you have that number, you can go into iSELECT to look up a job, put in that number, and it'll pop right up. So it's easier sometimes to remember that job number than it even is the job name. My location is Florida, United States. ASHRAE location. See, it's pulled the ASHRAE data already for West Palm Beach International Airport. And if I want to make any changes to any of that, I can just quickly click Edit Project Information. It'll pull it back up. And let's say I wanted to change that to Fort Lauderdale International Airport. Fort Lauderdale Executive Airport. There we go. Hit Update. And now my ASHRAE data is pulled for Fort Lauderdale. Now, let's say I said, oh, you know what? I want to make a note on this job. Okay, I can put a quote comment, or I can just put an internal note so that anybody in your organization that sees this. So here I'm going to say curbs not included. Notes internally and quote comments can be placed in these boxes. Okay, so now all I have to do is hit update project, and everything is up to date. So now what we can do is we can select one of two things, either a new unit or a modification. So let's just take a moment and talk about the difference. A new unit would be an ultra dry unit. That's one of our iAir ETL listed products that we build for you. Now, we use your base model equipment to do it, but that's what it is. It becomes an iAir unit with iAir's ETL listing and iAir's warranty unit. That's add a new unit. So what do we place under the add new unit? Well, ultra dry or our true VAV units are both iAir ETL listed and built units. We also, under new units, can add to that unit one of our mated ERVs. Okay, a mated ERV is one of the ERVs that iAir builds, energy recovery ventilator. We build it from the ground up. It's our own creation, and we can mate it or bolt it right onto the side of your unit from 50 tons and down. Okay, that's what we can do. Those are units. Now, in the future, our freestanding ERV, which we currently build, will be placed into iSELECT as a unit. Now, let's talk about modifications. What are modifications? Modifications are things that we do to your unit. You own the unit, you own the warranty on the unit, but you send it to us and say, hey, could you take this 10-ton package unit and make it double wall construction? Yes, so double wall construction is one of our modifications. Could you put a capacity control device like a Rawl valve on the stage 1 or stage 2 compressor of this unit? Certainly, that's a modification. Can you take our unit that we own and we send it to you, and you could coat the coils for us using your UltraGuard 10,000 hour salt spray corrosion resistant coating? Absolutely, we can. That's a modification. So that's the difference between adding a new unit or just a simple modification. Now, let's go to new unit. Let's select one. Add a new unit. When you click on that, 3 screens in successive order are going to come up. This is the first of those 3 screens. It's our unit selection screen. See, select unit design conditions. That's screen number 1 right here in the upper left-hand corner. The second screen that we'll come to after we put in the information we need on this first screen is select the needed options. And then the final screen is fan and configuration selection. Once you've gone through those 3 screens, you have selected an iAir unit. So let's start there. We're on screen number 1. We're going to select the design conditions. Now, much of this work has already been done for you. For example, configure a unit. Would you like it to be an ultra dry? If so, that's the default value. If you would rather it be a true VAV unit, you can select that. Now, because I'm an administrator and because iAir works with a number of different base manufacturers across the nation, and we try to keep these ones from competing as much as we can, you will see two other things in there, Humidimax and Magnadry. Those are different brands, different locations, different places. But Ultra Dry and True VAV, okay, those are the two things that you will see, your two choices under what unit model. So we'll look at Ultra Dry. That's what we're going to do. Now, notice that because our current design conditions, as I made that change for Fort Lauderdale, the elevation is 13 feet above sea level. It's already there. The ASHRAE data picked that up for you. Now we have the unit type. What type of unit? Packaged unit, cooling only, gas heat, split system. What do we have? Well, if you hit that drop down, there's all your choices. So we can do a packaged unit cooling only with electric heat. We can add electric heat to a packaged cooling only unit. We can do a packaged gas heat unit, packaged heat pump. We can even do a packaged unit with hot water heat. We can put a hot water heating coil in it and modulate a valve on that hot water heating coil to provide the appropriate level of heat using hot water as a medium. We can do split system cooling only and or with electric heat. We can do split system heat pump, or we can do water sourced heat pumps. So almost anything that Carrier builds in direct expansion, or any one of our vendors for that matter, we can build this. Okay. Now, there is something that we'd like to share with you. We have a modification that is not actually in iSELECT yet. We'll be putting it there, but for now, we build it for you kind of by hand. If you have a unit that is larger than, I believe it's 20 tons, I believe 20 tons is where Carrier stops building packaged heat pumps, we can convert straight cool units and or gas heat units into heat pump for you. So if you come upon an AON selection and it's a 40-ton heat pump, you can select a straight cool 40-ton heat pump in iSELECT and then send us an email at sales@myiair.com and say, hey, can you convert this to a heat pump for me? And the answer is yes. We will add something that we alone at iAir can add. It's called a Z option, Z for zebra option, and we will add a heat pump conversion to that unit for you. So if you ever run into AON specs and you say, well, we can't meet that spec, we got to no bid this, you should check with us because we definitely can do that for you. And I see AON speccing that because they feel like they have a lock on that being heat pump beyond 20 tons, but we can do that for you. So right now, we'll look at a packaged cooling only system. We'll just start there. And voltage defaults to 208 three-phase. However, there's 208 single-phase, 230 single-phase, 208 three-phase, 230 three-phase, 460, and 575. Those are your voltage choices. We'll stay with the default value of 208 three-phase. And then we default the external static pressure to 0.5. My suggestion to you is to always change this to 1.0. And the reason for that is because our main source of supply, where we purchase our Carrier units to build these units for you, they stock medium static fans. So if you put 1.0 as your external static, that will drive the selection in most cases to a medium static fan. Now, if you want the standard low static fan, that's fine, we can do it, but it'll increase lead time because most likely that would have to be ordered from Carrier factory, and we'd have to wait the 4 weeks for Carrier to build it before we get it. If I can pull it out of our supplier stock, I can get it next day. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, final choices in this basic initial configuration of the unit is we can do it as 100% outside air, or it can be a mixed air unit. Now you'll notice when I click on this, I'm going to scroll the screen up just a hair and I'm going to click on this again. Notice that when I click it to 100% outside air, an input screen disappears. That's the return air conditions input screen. The reason why it goes away is because at 100% outside air, there is no return air. We completely block off the return air intake area of a package unit. And if it's a split system, nobody's bringing in return air through ductwork. So you have no return air in a 100% outside air application. So we can do that. Or if we want to make it a mixed air unit, we can uncheck mark that. And now we have to put in a CFM in terms of airflow rate for return air and outside air. And that will give us a mixed air condition, which can be viewed right here. Mixed air, where I'm circling that. Okay. Now, with either of these configurations, whether it be 100% outside air or mixed air, I can add an ERV. And when I click ERV, you'll see that this little box comes in so we can put in some information around ERV. So no ERV, ERV. So what we'll do right now is we'll do a packaged unit selection with mixed air conditions with ERV, because that gives us 3 different places we've got to put some incoming air information. Okay, so let's just say that our outside air conditions are, this particular selection is calling for 2,500 CFM of outside air and 2,500 CFM of return air and 2,500 CFM of exhaust air, because we want the return air and the exhaust air to be equal. So we're doing neutral pressure in the building. Okay. And now notice that my outside air conditions right here, dry bulb, wet bulb for the outside air, are there because ASHRAE conditions were pulled when we put in the location data. So it's already there. You can tweak that. You can, these can be adjusted. So let's say your engineer says, yeah, I know ASHRAE design conditions are 91.4, 77.1, but my engineer likes to put a little safety factor in there. He'd like to see 95 degrees dry bulb and 80 degrees wet bulb. Okay, fine. You can adjust that. Maybe he's comfortable with the winter time dry bulb for winter. Okay. Return air conditions are what all engineers design for: 75 degrees dry bulb, 63 wet bulb, which equals 50% relative humidity at 75 degrees. And most people design for 70 degrees wintertime conditions in the space. Okay, great. We don't have to adjust any of those. But just so you know, you can. Every one of these fields in the outside air and return air conditions is adjustable. You can just tab on it and change it however you want. Like if I wanted to make this 76 degrees, there it's 76. I'll move it back to 75. If I want to make my wintertime conditions 68, okay, fine, 68. But I'll go back and leave that at 70 for now. Okay. All right. So the first thing I need to do, since I have an ERV on this job, is simply hit this button right here, select me an ERV. And iSELECT goes about its thought process, and we'll give it a minute to pull the appropriate ERVs that it can pull to manage these conditions. And sometimes because I'm working from my home, it's a little bit, it takes a couple of minutes to pull it here, or a couple of seconds, I should say. There we go. So it just came back and said, hey, we can use a 36-inch diameter low CFM wheel or a 36-inch diameter high CFM wheel, or we can use a 41-inch wheel or a 46-inch wheel, because those wheel sizes conform to a cabinet size that will allow us to bolt onto any of the units that we're going to select in that CFM range. So could we use an even larger size? Does it go to a larger size wheel? Oh, yes, it goes all the way to the 46-inch wheel. Does it go to a 52-inch wheel? No, it does not. So that's obviously too large of a cabinet for the maximum sized unit, air conditioning unit that we would use here. Okay, well, what's the most cost-effective way to do that? Well, obviously to use the smallest wheel. The smallest wheel denotes the smallest cabinet size, less materials, all that sort of thing. So it saves us money. Now, the question is though, is our ERV going to get us to a condition that makes better sense? So our 2500 CFM of outside air was coming into the intake of the ERV at 95 degrees dry bulb, 80 degrees wet bulb. And look what we can do using the 36H. The high CFM wheel has actually a little bit less material in it than the low CFM wheel. So it's going to be the most cost effective. In the 36-inch wheel is the smallest wheel we can use, and it can take us all the way to 81 degrees dry bulb and 69 wet bulb. So it's going to recover 107,000 BTUs. That's a heck of a lot of work for this particular unit. So I'm going to grab that one. I'm going to hit this little plus and say that 36-inch wheel is going to be plenty good enough for me to reduce the refrigeration capacity of this system pretty dramatically. So I'm going to take that deal. So now that's the one I'm using. And now I can come down here and say, okay, required heat exchanger leaving air conditions. So in iAir world, we have 3 air conditions we really care about. We care about the entering air, what's entering the unit, or in this case, the ERV. What is leaving the evaporator or leaving the wintertime heat exchanger. And then we have what we call discharge air, which is what's coming out the end of the unit. Now, here's the interesting thing. With this combination, I need at least 175,000 BTUs, total capacity, to get to 55 degrees off my evaporator. Okay? Now, could I be missing out on a unit that might be real close to that? Well, it's possible. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bump this up to 57 and bump this up to 56.9 just to see, is there something that's going to get me real close? Like maybe I would leave the evaporator at 55.1 or 55.2, and that may be very acceptable to my engineer. So to find out, all I got to do is hit show possible units. And here we have a 17.5 ton unit that's leaving at 52.7, a 20 ton unit that's leaving at 49.3. So I wonder why I can't get even smaller, maybe into a 15 ton chassis. Well, the way to find out, let's put this at 60 degrees, put this at 59.9, and hit show possible units one more time. Aha! There is another unit. There is a 12.5 ton that would leave at 58. Now, for some reason, and I'll tell you what that reason is, I can't do a 15 ton unit. There's a reason for that. It's not that I can't completely do it, it's that iSELECT doesn't pull a 15 ton in this particular case. The reason being is because the 15 ton unit is called a chassis 5 unit. In that unit, I cannot factory bolt an ERV onto that chassis size and still fit on a flatbed truck, because all the way up to chassis 5, the carrier unit is configured in such a way that I have to bolt the ERV onto the side of the unit. And I can't ship it that way because now it's too big. Once I go to a chassis 6, I bolt the ERV onto the end of the unit and I can fit it back onto a flatbed. The smaller units, chassis 4321, will fit on a flatbed even in the L shape. So that's why a 15 ton is not coming up in this particular selection. So what we would have to do is, on this particular one, you'd have to send an email to us at sales@myiair saying, hey, is there any way we can do a 15 ton? And what we would do is we'd go back and split it out. We would select the ERV by itself manually for you. And then if that left us with a net result of a 15 ton unit, we would select it based on the mixed air conditions that would be coming into the unit, and we do it that way. And then, yes, we would ship it as 2 pieces, and the contractor could mate it in the field. So now that I know what units will give me what capacity, we'll just assume for the sake of this demonstration that the FE20 is the unit we want. We want to be below 55 off the evaporator, and we'll say right now this is the closest thing we can do. It gets us to just under 53 degrees, and that's not a bad design condition. 53 at full load is perfectly fine. Many engineers like that. They like those extra couple of degrees below 55 to ensure that they will have 50% relative humidity at 75 degrees in the space. Okay, so now we can go to page 2, which is our options page. Are there any air supplied options that we would like to put on this unit? Well, we've already got the ERV since we were doing it as an ERV selection. That's grayed out and it's check marked. It's already there. And down here, low ambient head pressure controls, as always, you cannot uncheck that. We don't build any of our units without head pressure control. It works very well to help us maintain refrigerant temperatures, pressures, and flow rates throughout the system. Okay, so you always have that. And then finally, we always have check marked, no matter what, startup. We will not build an ultra dry unit without air handling startup. So those are things you cannot uncheck. That's why they're in gray. All right, now if you scroll down just a little further, since we do have an ERV, there's one option that we cannot be without. So it's also check marked and highlighted in gray. That's our 2-position outside air damper for our intake damper. Okay, we have to have that because it's now the means by which we control the intake of the air. And the unit is always built with an exhaust fan. And that's not a selectable option. That is we don't even build an ERV without it. Without an exhaust fan, there is no ERV. So we have the energy wheel and the exhaust fan that are always a standard part of the construction, no matter what. And then we apply the 2-position outside air damper for intake because we have to be able to intake and we have to be able to close that damper in the unoccupied period. So that being the case, these are the things that are automatic and you cannot deselect them. But what things can we select? Okay, let's say we're not going to have any type of backnet on this job, and so somebody needs to be able to tell this unit when to start stop. We would select our 365-day timer, which gives us the ability to set a start time and a stop time. In other words, an occupied and an unoccupied period. It's a 365-day, so you could set up different days and times with it. Let's say that since this unit's going to go on the roof and it's going to sit on a curb, we should put a condensate drain safety switch. So for whatever reason, if the condensate drain plugs up, we're not spilling over into the building and wrecking ceilings and all that other kind of stuff. What else would we like to have on this unit? Phase monitor, just so that we don't blow up electrical components. And there's a host of some other options that can be applied on any job. You're welcome to select those. And when you do, they come up check marked in green. Now, over on the right side of the page, we have some drop-down options. UltraGuard coating. Would you like to have UltraGuard coating? You could do the whole entire unit, whole unit corrosion-resistant coating. Or we can do all the coils only in the unit, or we can do just the condenser coils, because the condenser coils in a mixed air condition aren't seeing the amount of salt coming in through the outside air intake that the condenser coil sitting right outdoors would see. So it's your choice. Let's just, so you can see it built into the unit, do an all coils. We can add service outlets, either powered or non-powered. Split power options on a package unit using split power. Let's say that this particular unit is going to be used in a hospital application. We could split the power with what we call a split power disconnect that would allow us to power up the controls and the evaporator fan, and in the case of this ERV, open the outside air damper so that we could run that without loading up their generator with all the compression and still at least provide ventilation air to the building. So using having an ERV is a great way to do it, because now the temperature inside the building and the humidity inside the building is lower than outdoors. You can still gain some amount of cooling effect and ventilate the space, even on emergency standby generator for brief periods. So we offer that. Split power disconnect. Now, controls. We want to talk about controls very specifically, because many times when jobs sometimes unfortunately go sideways, it's because people don't understand controls. And sometimes even the consulting engineers don't truly understand what it is that they're actually specifying. So with iAir products, we have 3 different types of controls. We have what we call discharge air controlled unit. We have what we call a space or process controlled unit with ERV. And then in a non-ERV application, we have what we call thermostat control. So we're going to talk just briefly about these different types of control. But before we do that, there's one very important thing that I'd like everybody to take home from this training class. Okay. And that is, when iAir builds you a modulated hot gas reheat unit, which is an ultra dry unit, some people call it a DOAS unit. Some people call it a 100% outside air unit. Some people call it a modulated hot gas reheat unit. That's what ultra dry is. Okay, it's a modulated hot gas reheat unit. It has the ability to do 100% outside air. Therefore, it is classified by many as a DOAS unit. Okay, and here's the bold statement that I'd like everybody to take home. Anytime iAir builds an ultra dry unit, we always, always, always control discharge air, no matter what. In fact, we're the only manufacturer that controls discharge air 100% of the time, all the time. We never shut off the modulated hot gas reheat, whereas our competitors like Aon actually do. They call it a cooling mode, and then they call it a dehume mode. Technically, our units are always in the dehume mode. So I'm going to say this again. We always, always, always control the discharge air temperature. Now, why then do we have a control type or a control flavor called discharge air control, or DAT, as you see it here? Because we can control a unit to the discharge air temperature. In fact, that's actually what people are doing when we build a unit to deliver neutral air to a space. That is discharge air control. We are setting a discharge air temperature. Remember, that's the temperature of the air out the end of the unit. That's after that air has been processed by the unit at all points. Meaning, it comes across the evaporator, it leaves the evaporator at a certain temperature. It comes through the reheat coil. It gets tempered again. Or if it's wintertime, it comes through the wintertime heating medium, whether that's a gas heat exchanger, an electric strip, or even heat pump operation. Discharge air control, we always, always, always control discharge air, but in discharge air control, we're controlling to what's coming up the end of the unit. And we have a special sensor that gets placed in the duct about 2 feet downstream in the supply duct that is the control point for that. So with discharge air control, you will not get a wall-mounted thermostat or device of any kind, because it's controlling to what's coming out the end of the unit. Now, what is a good application for discharge air control? Well, there's 2 actually. Number 1, I need to process outside air so I can push it into the return air section of another unit. So let's say you have a job that has 4 or 5 units to control some different zones, and every one of those units needs to have outside air brought in. But you choose not to put an outside air damper on it. So you're relying on a dedicated outside air unit to process the outside air and deliver it to the return air sections of another unit. So if I've got return air coming back into unit B, right, and I'm mixing outside air with it, that outside air has to be processed. So by creating neutral conditions, the same temperature and humidity of the air coming back, now I can mix those air streams within that package unit and not cause any problems. I won't cause moisture to grow. I won't cause mold to grow, any of that sort of thing, because my two convergent air streams are the same temperature and humidity conditions. That is application number one for discharge air control. The other application would be I have a building or I have a bunch of package units or a VRF system with multiple air handlers, and all these other units are responsible for space, temperature, and humidity control. And all I'm doing is just providing some ventilation air so that I meet the code requirement of 15 CFM per person. So I want to deliver air directly into the space in small amounts. Okay. Again, I don't want to cause moisture to build up on a diffuser. I don't want mold to grow on ceiling tiles or any of that kind of stuff. So I just take a small amount of air. Maybe it's a 100 CFM per individual space, but I got 30 spaces in that building. So now I need 3,000 CFM of outside air. So I simply bring it in, cool it down to wring the moisture out, reheat it through the modulated hot gas reheat coil in an ultra dry unit, and deliver it to the space at 75 degrees, 50% RH. Why? Because I match the conditions in the space that way. So those are my two basic applications for discharge air control. Now you'll see I can do DAT control, which I just call DAT control. That's constant volume. My fan is set to a specific speed, and that's the end of it. I can also do discharge air control for VAV applications, even on an ultra dry unit. We can also give you discharge air control VAV with building static pressure control. Why? Because if we're bringing in a large amount of outside air, we can now control the static pressure in the building and maintain a positive building static pressure. So when you open the door to come into the building, it's not under a vacuum. It makes it real easy to open, and you'll just get a gentle little breeze hitting you in the face as you walk in. That means that building is under positive pressure. So DAT with VAV building static pressure control can do that. Now, ERV, when we do ERV control, we can do ERVs with with DAT control, or we can do them ERV space control. So we have a wall sensor that now goes on the wall and can control to a constant volume or to VAV duct, VAV building. But that space controller is now, instead of controlling based off what it's seeing in the supply duct, it's controlling based off what it's seeing in the space. And it's the same for our our ultra dry thermostat control. It's a space thermostat. It's reading temperature and humidity in the space and asking the unit to bring on or turn off compressors according to what the needs in the space are, to use the modulated hot gas reheat to trim off conditions before the air comes into the space. And then we also have something we call process control. All of these flavors, whether it's ultra dry DAT, whether it's ultra dry space, whether it's ultra dry thermostat or ultra dry process, they can all be done with the VAV options you see here, VAV duct static pressure or VAV building static pressure control. Now, you'll see a no controls option in there. That's something that, because I'm an administrator, I have in there. You might see it in yours. We do not recommend it because we do not offer warranty for units with no controls. So we're just going to ignore the no controls one for now because we have to do startup. It has to be our controls. That doesn't mean people can't take control of the unit. People can, through BACnet, take control of the unit and make adjustments to set points and everything. That's all available. But the control of the compressors, the control of the modulated hot gas reheat has to have our control on it. Otherwise, we won't sell the unit in most cases. Now, let's talk about process control for just 1 minute. What is process control? Process control is something that we developed for very, very precise indoor conditions. Let's say, for example, you're doing a clean room that manufactures something highly precision, like maybe cancer research and treatment drugs. We've done many of these types of clean rooms. Process control gives us very, very tight, precise control. And another application is grow houses for medicinal marijuana, for example, or indoor farming applications. These types of control might need to run cooling when the outdoor temperature is very cold because they have livestock, plants growing that give off heat. And on a 20-degree day outside, it could be 80 degrees in that space, and that livestock needs to be cooled down. So process control allows us to do one very specific thing. It allows us to select a unit whereby we can run the full complement of cooling and modulated hot gas reheat along with wintertime heat at the same time. And think about that from an electric unit standpoint. We might have to run compressors and electric resistance heaters at the same time, right alongside the modulated hot gas reheat. We could have everything in operation at one time. We call that process control. And when it comes to a specific process, it is allowed under energy code. So what process does in iSELECT, it calculates the MCA and MOCP to be able to consider the fact that we could be running all of these things at the same time. And so you will have a higher MCA and MOCP of your unit because it will have the ability to run all devices, including wintertime heat and cooling at the same time. So those are our controls. So the one thing I'd like everybody to remember is we always, always, always control the discharge air temperature. What we're controlling it to is why we've put these different control types together for your benefit and the benefit of your customers. So right now, we're just going to stay with ERV space control for our example right here. Now, heat control. Heat control. We have staged heat or modulated heat. Modulated heat is the default value when we're not using an ERV. And in some cases, if you're using a heat pump, you may not need heat control at all because when we build an ultra dry unit, we put frequency drives on the compressors. So we modulate wintertime heat on a heat pump by default. So this control option for heat control has to do with ancillary heat, like if your unit has a gas heat exchanger in it, or if it has electric strips. If you're doing gas heat or electric strips, we always recommend modulated heat because it's very inexpensive to do and it gives your end user much better control over wintertime heat and saves energy and money. So if you happen to select a heat pump and there is no need for supplemental electric heat, it's going to default to modulated heat. So you're going to want to go in here and hit staged heat. Otherwise, you're paying for a modulation controller, either an SCR controller for electric or some control module that controls your gas heat that you don't need. So that's a nuance. That's kind of a quirk in iSELECT. So we're gonna stay with staged heat right here for our purposes of our example. And then finally, in this area, this second page where we select these options, you can pull a disconnect. We can mount a nice big gray disconnect switch or fuse disconnect on the unit for you. Or if we stay with no disconnect, the electrical contractor would be required to mount one on the unit and connect that up. Now, because we have an ERV, finally, are there any final options we'd like to add to our ERV? Well, I always like to put frost protection in there because there are times, even in South Florida, where it could get cold enough that if I've got a high velocity of outside air coming in, I could wind up having to have something that can give me some frost protection, like stop and jog the wheel, for example. So I'm going to select that. So now I'm going to hit next. And this brings us to our final page, page 3. Page 3 only has 2 items. Now, Because I'm an administrator and because my account is through iAir, I can add custom options. You will not see this green button, but if you need a custom option added, you can email us and we can put it in there for you. And if we put it in there for you, we'll just email you back and say, hey, job's up to date in iSelect. You could go right in there and see it then once we've added it. So what do we do on our final page? Just two things. Vertical supply, vertical return, or horizontal supply, vertical supply, horizontal return, or horizontal, horizontal. Because we've got an ERV and this is a package unit, we'll just say it's going to sit on a curve, vertical supply, vertical return. Because remember, with an ERV, even if I'm 100% outside air, if I got an ERV and I'm using that ERV, I've got to get a return duct back to the unit because I need that exhaust air to drive the process of the energy wheel. Okay, so we'll say vertical, vertical. And then on our fans, notice we have standard static fan all the way to ultra high static fan. We don't need all those fan selections. And there's about 10,000 iterations this thing will have to go through to pick all those different fans. So I'm going to click here and say adjust fan, and I'm going to say medium static fan. Okay, so now I'm going to say show possible units, and it's going to think a minute. Oop, no unit found with current conditions. Okay, let me go back. Maybe I need a higher static fan or even an extra high static fan. So let me get rid of that. Let me hit show possible units again and see, aha, there we go. So now, oh yeah, see if I do the 17.5 ton unit, it does drive me to an extra high static fan. And the reason it does is because I've got a tremendous pressure drop on my energy wheel. So we're going to select that unit. We're going to hit the plus sign. Now, it brings up this little note telling me, hey, possible cost savings. It's telling me that because if I add as an option an outside air intake fan on my ERV, I don't have to have the extra high static fan in the unit, and there could be a savings for that. Okay, let's follow that train of logic right there. I'm going to click off of that, cancel this for a moment, go back to the previous screen, and say, hey, let me put a supply air blower. Let me find it here. Outside air blower. Let me grab that right there. Now I'll say next. Now I'll say show possible units. It'll take a minute and it'll select that for me. And now I'm back to a medium static fan. And yeah, I saved a few pennies on that. So I'm going to select that FE20. I'm going to call it OARTU-1, quantity of 1, add, UDCFE20 added to the list. Okay, now I'm going to go back and look at my job. There we go. I've just selected my unit. It's going to be an ultra dry unit, FE20 based unit, medium static fan. H is my voltage designator. S is my control, which is ERV space. It did pick me a 19 kilowatt heater to go in it. C is staged control of that heater. 00 means I did not put an I air supply disconnect on the unit, so there's no disconnect. A means I'm vertical supply, vertical return. Then my options, where the dash is, I go to my options. I got option C, which is coating on all coils. E is my ERV. V is my low ambient head pressure controls. Y is my startup. 1 is my 365-day timer. 3 is my condensate drain switch. 7 is my phase monitor. And then the 36 HAMP is a designator for the ERV, telling us we have a 36-inch high CFM wheel in it. The A, the M, and the P. The A is the outside air intake damper. The M and the P are the other options in the unit, which I think, if I remember correctly, we put the blower in there for the outside air intake, and we put the frost protection on the unit. Now, if I want to make adjustments to this unit, I can simply hit this little arrow down under actions and hit edit the unit. If I go in there, I can change anything that I've done in the unit. So I could go back and change any one of these conditions on any one of the 3 screens. Like, for example, if on this unit, because I have an electric heater, I want to say, you know what, give me modulated heat control instead of stage. Now I've got an SCR controller on my electric heater. Click next, and then just say show possible units one more time. It'll take a moment and re-pull the units. Now, with modulation of the electric heater, it's reminding me the unit you just edited is an FE20, so I'll just go back there, pick that same unit, update the selection, and here we are. Now I've got an M instead of a C right here, and the price trickled up just a little bit. Let's say I got another unit just like this one, and I think it might be the same size. Well, okay, I'll just say duplicate unit. Now I've got this copy. I could go in and edit it. And let's say on that one, I say, no, on this second one, I want to keep staged heating. So I'll just go into this one, make it staged heating, go next, show possible units. It's going to come back with that same FE20. And now here I'm going to edit this, and I'm going to call it OARTU-2. Update it. Thank you for the update. And I'm going to click back on the job. Now I've got 2 units on the job. Now, at this point, with multiple units on the job, I could download a submittal right now, and that submittal is going to have both of those units, full submittal. But let's say I go, hey, wait a minute, you know what? I kind of want to look at the submittal of this one I just put staged heating on. Do I really want staged heating? I could do a submittal preview of just that unit by itself. Okay, so if I click submittal preview here, it's going to pull up a submittal only on that one unit. So I can go back, make whatever tweaks or changes I want to on that one unit, and then the total job submittal will be correct. So here's my submittal for this one unit. All right, so I'm going to cancel out of this and say, okay, no, I like that. So, or I might say, you know, the contractor just called me, he only wants one unit. Okay, I could go back and delete this unit. Sure you want to delete number 2? Okay, it's gone. Now I have my quote, which is your cost. Here's everything that you just selected, and here's your cost for it. You'll need to mark that up. Remember at the beginning, I put a little note in there that says, or a comment in there that says curbs not included. Look where that shows up. Lower left-hand part of your quote, curbs not included. Okay. So now if I cancel out of that, I can pull a submittal for the whole job. And in this case, now it's back to 1 unit. Now, let's say I would like to say, oh, that engineer told me it was Fort Lauderdale, but it's not. It's actually West Palm Beach. Well, I can go and edit product and project info, and I can look at that, and I can say, oh, let me change that around, and then just update the project to get back out of it. So that is iSELECT, and that is how you can use it. Do we have any questions that anybody would like to ask about iSELECT, iAir, any of our products, or anything of the sort? I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to say if there's no questions, I definitely want to thank everyone for joining today. I hope this was informative and helpful for you. If you do not have an iSELECT account, please go to our website, upper left-hand corner, hit that little block that says Get iSELECT Quote, and then where the first screen comes up, hit Sign Up. In the lower right-hand corner, fill out the sheet that comes up, hit Submit, and we'll go ahead and approve you for an account. All right. So thank you, everyone, and have a great day.